Hi, my name is Gina Castaneda, and I'm here to share a little bit about my story. My good friend Lori and I talk about my story, and she always tells me how my story is the hero's journey. So today I just want to share a little bit of that. When I was born, I was taken away from my mom and put into foster care. I was in foster care for approximately a year and then returned back to my mom. I remember as a child not having enough food at the house to eat, and when there was food, we fought for it. But just the basic needs, I didn't have them. I didn't feel warmth, I didn't feel love, I didn't feel safe. I was always searching for some security, some love, some comfort, a safe place to be. I remember at 6 years old, my life changed. One day the phone rang and they asked for my mom. I remember she was asleep and I ran to her to wake her up, to give her the phone. When my mom woke up, she hung up the phone and my mom beat me. I remember being punched in the face and kicked and dragged by my hair. I remember my hair being ripped out of my skull and blood being on my hands, and I remember crying. When my mom finally stopped, I remember going to my room and being confused. Why the person that I loved so much in my life could inflict this much pain on me. This was happening not just to me, but to my brothers and sisters too. My life just kept getting worse. At the age of 11, my mom separated from my stepfather, Ernesto, and we became homeless. I remember walking the streets of Watsonville, going to the plaza, eating hot dogs from the hot dog stand because it was the only thing that we could afford, and being really lucky if I got a bag of 25-cent Cheez-Its. I remember having to leave the plaza with my mom and trying to find a place to sleep, and walking down past the police station to the levee in front of the bars to the back of Ramsey, where we would try to be the first family in the monkey or the train. I don't know what my mom was looking for. I just remember being hungry, cold, unsafe, and really scared. I always went to school. People think that I went to school because I knew education was the key to saving my life, but it wasn't. I went to school because I was looking for a place where I felt safe and I could feel security. I was looking for a place where I could just be and not be scared. I was hungry. They had breakfast and they had lunch, but I remember leaving the school and feeling unsafe and not knowing where that I would sleep that day and that night. I remember coming to Watsonville and not being able to find my mom. And I remember going to the plaza and sitting there for hours, sitting at the bus bench, walking to the levee, coming around to the back of Ramsey, sitting at a bus bench and just waiting. And truthfully, I thought that I would never see my mom again, that she would be dead underneath a bush at Ramsey Park. That day, there was a man that came to my aid. He was a gang member. He was my brother's friend. He was a family friend. I remember him taking care of me all night and buying me something to eat. And the next day, him giving me money so that I could ride the bus. He said, "Go to school. Don't worry about your mom. I'm going to help you." I remember coming back to Watsonville and just being scared to death. He found me. He had found my mom, and he said, "Come with me." And we went to his house. He lived in a junkyard. We had to cross this drainage pipe to get to his house. I remember his trailer in the junkyard, where, although it was nothing, was the first place in a long time where I had a roof, I felt safe, I had a place to sleep, and there was some kind of normalcy in my life again. At that point in my life, I could see what was happening around me. I could see the addiction, I could see the drugs, I could see the violence, I could see the hurt and pain that not only myself, but my family and the people that were around me were going through. I knew that I didn't want that in my life. I remember at one point, this man asked me to carry drugs and weapons for him, and I refused. And when I refused, I remember taking the beating of my life and having to be homeless again. That beating wasn't even as bad as the beating my mom would give me later on, because we didn't have a place to live anymore. I was back on the streets and I was unsafe. I was hungry and really had no place to go. People ask me all the time, when was my bottom? My bottom was when my mom and I had to open dumpsters at the back of restaurants and pull food out to be able to feed ourselves. That was truly my bottom. When I had no place to stay, no food to eat, no place to go. I remember the first person in my life that started to speak light into me was my stepfather, Ernesto. I remember he used to tell me, don't listen to your mom. You're good. You're going to be great. You're going to make it. I remember in middle school, I had a teacher tell me that I could make it, to reach for the stars, that they were in my reach. When I got to high school, I had a coach and an athletic director that believed in me. They took the time to listen, to care, to have a safe space, to feed me. I felt growth. For the first time in my life, I knew that I could accomplish something. When I started playing team sports, the team sports filled the gaps in my life. I felt from the team love, support, security. For the first time in my life, people were cheering for me. I knew that I could make it. My athletic director repeatedly told me that I could graduate. He said, you'll be the first one in your family, but you can do it. I remember my mom didn't go to my graduation. My father didn't go to my graduation. My stepfather showed up for me, and so did my coach, my athletic director. Not only did they show up for me, my athletic director guided me, paid for my cap and gown, gave me a congratulations card, and said, this is just the beginning. That's when I transitioned my life into my next step. I knew then that I could make it. For I had learned to survive on the streets, and I was also learning these other skills to be able to move myself forward. I'll never forget the hurt and the pain. I'll never forget the trauma, the violence, the addiction, the drugs, and the abuse that I saw and that I went through. It just made me a stronger person. I took that and I moved myself forward, pushing myself to want to be better, and not only pushing myself to want to be better, but making a commitment to my family, the family that I did not have yet, to my future husband, and to the children that one day that I would have, that I would never have them go through anything that I had to survive, that I had to live through, and that I would make my life and their lives better, that they would feel love, safe, security, that they would have their basic needs met, and that I would take it one step further, and they would have love and happiness and a future. Once I made that commitment to myself, I knew that there was a need out there in the community, and I started to do work in the community as a peer educator, as a health educator. But I really found a calling when I started to work with families that were involved in gangs, I saw kids that were living the same life that I was living, families that were struggling and living through so much pain. I really wanted to make a difference. I started to work at the jail with adult men that were addicted to drugs, and I could see their girlfriends, their wives, and their children coming in to visit them, and I could see the same pain that I lived as a child. Later on in life, I got recruited to be a probation officer. I never wanted to be a probation officer. It's not something that I strive to be. I remember law enforcement being something that I couldn't trust. That's why I walked by the police department every single day and felt like I couldn't knock on the door and ask for help. But now, as a law enforcement officer, I have championed my life to be the voice of the forgotten, stand up for justice, and to move families forward so that they also can have love and support and feel happiness in their life.